Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah. Today we hit a bit of a mile marker. Show number 1,500. Holy cow, I've talked to a lot of people. Here we go.
Time here is limited, and that's really been a guiding force in my life in terms of what I've chosen to do.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, inspiring automotive enthusiasts, and welcome to Cars Yeah. I'm pretty revved up today because it's show number 1,500, which means I've talked to an awful lot of people. And today I'm talking with Paul Dorleon. He's calling in from San Francisco, California, beautiful city where my son lives. Paul Dorleon is a globally recognized expert on the history of motorcycles and motorcycle cultures. His website, thevintagent.com, has been the gold standard for motorcycle writing since 2006. Paul's authored several books, including his most recent book, which we'll be talking about today, A Ton Up, A Century of Cafe Racer Speed and Style, published by my good friends at Motorbooks. Other titles include Custom Revolution, The Chopper, The Real Story, takes me back to my youth, The Cafe Racers, and many others. He's a columnist for Cycle World and Classic Bike Guide, and contributes monthly to magazines around the world, bringing his unique viewpoint to the contemporary motorcycle scene. Paul is also an artist, a photographer who has spent 25 years as a professional muralist, a decorative painter, and his art has been used on many album covers by many musicians. A man of many trades. We'll be back in a minute to talk to Paul, but first, a word from our sponsors that make Cars Yeah possible. Hey, Cars Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Covercraft. I've protected my vehicles with their products for decades. Want to keep your vehicle's interior looking new? It's easy with Covercraft seat covers. They'll protect your seats from the daily abuse of pets, children, weekend adventures, and even those everyday spills. It's a fast, easy, and inexpensive way to keep your vehicle looking new. All Covercraft seat covers are easy on, easy off design that are machine washable. You can choose from many fabric options, colors, and accessories, all designed and carefully sewn for your special vehicles. Their seat gloves are semi-custom fit for cars and trucks, and their seat savers, a favorite of mine, are custom tailored to fit your seats like a glove. Work truck seat covers are tough, durable denim weight fabric. It's like putting a pair of rugged jeans on your truck's seats. Want to stay warm? Covercraft also offers seat heaters. Covercraft is the right choice. Learn more today at covercraft.com and tell them Mark at Cars Yeah sent you. That's covercraft.com. Are you a Cars Yeah subscriber? If you're not, go to carsyeah.com, click on the free book button, and I'll send you my free filler up book. It's a very cool book I created of fuel filler fun, some very cool imagery, and great quotes from past guests here on Cars Yeah. Plus, you'll get my weekly email follow-up and my weekly blog. Just go to carsyeah.com, click on the free book button, and I'll send it to you right away. Thanks for subscribing. Hey, Paul, welcome to the 1,500th episode of Cars Yeah. I've hit quite a mile marker here. Are you buckled up? Or actually, let me rephrase what I usually say. Do you have your helmet on, your gloves and boots, and are we ready for a fun ride?
I've got all the gear all the time. I'm ready to go.
There you go. Absolutely. We'll be safe. Don't throw me off the back of the bike, though. That's all I ask. Before we jump into the questions here, tell our listeners just a little bit about this very eclectic, unique life that you've had, because you delve into a lot of different things, don't you?
Yes. I've always forged my own path. Basically, I've only ever had one job in my life when I was a teenager, and kind of went on my own from there as an artist, learning how to do decorative painting and murals. And about 14 years ago, I started a blog, much like you started a podcast. I didn't really know what it was at first, and then it became a thing. And in 2006, nobody was really doing a blog about old motorcycles. Hardly any blogs about motorcycles, but there were some. But I was kind of the first to do, let's say, an authoritative and researched blog, The Vintagent, about motorcycle culture. And it's really evolved over the years. to embrace kind of contemporary motorcycle culture and custom motorcycle culture. And I got commissioned by the German publisher Gestalten to research the history of the chopper, because no one had ever actually done that in any serious way. So that became my chopper book. So I've sort of covered, and more recently in the last 5 years, I've been covering electric motorcycles and did another book with Gestalten called The Current, which was based on a web vertical on my website that follows the electric motorcycle scene. So I've kind of become much more of a generalist than I ever thought. Coming from the vintage world, one doesn't expect to be talking about electric or custom or choppers or
yeah.
So
although it's interesting because I've had some guests on the show here who Z Electric is one, David Bernardo, who takes old vintage Volkswagens, and he's done a couple Porsches as well, and puts electric motors in the back of them.
I've seen them. Yeah, I saw some of them at the Quail last year.
Yes, exactly. That's David, and it's really fascinating. And Jaguar probably saw that XKE they had where they put the electric in, which so many people thought was blasphemy. But I thought it was kind of a cool deal because whether you like it or not, electric's here. It's coming on fast, and I think it's here to stay. So, it's fun what you've done. I rode bikes way back when I was a kid, a lot of dirt bikes down living in Southern California, going to Mexico, riding up and down beaches and sand dunes and stuff. And I got back into them for a short time, living up here in the Pacific Northwest. Every time I talk to somebody about bikes, I get a little nostalgic and go, why did I stop riding? But, life gets in the way and so forth. Well, we're going to learn more about you, about this new book, Ton Up, which is cool. I love vintage cafe racers, so I'm really excited to have you on the show today. But another quick question for you, Paul, what's one little thing that most people don't know about you?
Well, the fact that I'm an artist, that I started out as a painter.
Yeah.
Unless they've known me for a long time and knew that was my career, the people in the motorcycle world don't know that I started out that way and had kind of an epiphany in college, actually. I was not an artist as a student in public school, but when I went to college at UCSC, I was a biophysics major.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, there's a switch.
I'm really good at maths and science, and so was fully committed to a path. Santa Cruz has a program called the History of Consciousness, and I was interested in a scientific study of consciousness. And my second semester in, I took an art class just kind of to blow off steam, and I had an epiphany and realized, oh my God, I'm an artist. As well as a scientist or an artist with a scientific brain, and kind of never turned back. I took a lot of design and environmental studies and environmental design and art history and architectural history classes.
Yeah.
And all that research that I did has served me in good stead in my career as an interior designer and decorative painter, and later as a writer in the motoring industry. I think the more you bring to whatever subject you're covering, the more interesting you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a great metaphor for the twists and turns of riding motorcycles. My gosh, that's a huge twist. When you think about it, you think of people in one part of the campus, all you smart guys, and then the artists, the crazy artists on the other end. And I studied graphic design, advertising, and business, so I'd kind of switch from one end of the campus to the other and going back and forth, and they were such different people. The fact that you took that turn, I think, is absolutely fascinating, and that you found your creativity in a really unique way. So that's pretty cool. Well, let's start with a success quote or a mantra, some kind of saying that's instrumental in your life that has helped you form your success over time. So grab the handlebars and twist the wrist.
Well, I think it could be phrased many ways. I don't have a mantra painted up on my desk, but I think you only live once, or seize the day. When I was 15, I learned how to meditate, and I'm not a proselytizer or anything, but I did it for my own kind of mental health and peace of mind, coming out of growing up in a turbulent family in the 1960s, a very turbulent age in California.
When you were in San Francisco, too, where things were really turbulent in the 60s.
Exactly. And a lot of families, experienced that period in different ways. And mine was quite chaotic. And so I looked for peace and solace. But I also became really interested in let's say, a Buddhist or Hindu take on death, and really the understanding that our time here is limited, and that's really been a guiding force in my life in terms of what I've chosen to do, what I've chosen to follow. I've would never be content working at a job, if you know what I mean, and so have always just figured out a way to make my own living and do what interested me. So that has really been a guiding light. And I painted in about 1984. I painted on the back of my leather jacket a logo that's still there. It's a skull in profile it has a mohawk of tarot cards. And, it's,
oh my gosh. Yeah.
being the typical skull and crossbones insignia for motorcyclists is kind of, it's like a shield to prevent you from investigating the vulnerability of an individual, right? It's like, keep away. But in my case, it's more just a memento mori. It's like, keep focused on who's important to you and what's important to you, and do what you think is your purpose in this world.
This is wonderful, Paul. And the reason is you're giving me some reminders, really nice reminders of my father. I lost him about 3 years ago. He was an artist, an architect, his career, and he kind of followed later in life that career. He found meditation. He did a lot of yoga, and kind of the Buddhist sense of life and how to think about life and death, and it had a very calming effect on him and his life. And I could see the changes for the positive in many ways, because as we all know, those of us who have our own businesses, there can be some strife and challenges once in a while, right? Of just like, okay, what's going to happen next week? Although I think for most people who think they have a very secure job working for other people, what they don't know is there's really no security in it at all.
Nor in any aspect of life.
Yeah, it could change very
Health,
quickly.
Relationship.
Yeah, everything.
Home.
Yeah, everything. But I think that's a great way to go through life. Let's talk a little bit about this new book, because that's what pulled Paul and I together. My friends at Motorbooks, they send me these wonderful books, and they say, hey, would you like to have these great authors on your show? And this one really caught my eye. I love the graphics on the cover, the Cafe Racer, Ton Up. So tell us about this book, what inspired you to write it, what it means, and tell me about the title, Ton Up.
Yeah, ton up is an old British expression. I mean, we start at the point where it means to go 100 miles per hour. So the ton is 100, even though it's 2,000 in weights. But in England, previous to that, to earn a ton or to achieve a ton meant 100 of something in British slang. So I think that's how it evolved into being a notation for 100 miles per hour. And so the phrase ton up has really come to signify a daredevilry and became associated. It's a bit archaic now. I don't think too many people use the phrase, but in the 1950s and 60s, it was really associated with cafe racer culture. When I first discovered motorcycles beyond, let's say, just a utilitarian device, I learned to ride at 15 so I could take night classes in high school to graduate a year early because I hated high school. And discovered that if I took certain classes at the local community college, I could graduate a year early. So I've been forever grateful to motorcycles for getting me out of high school. But I didn't really embrace them as, let's say, a lifestyle or a passion until after college. And a friend, I had a printing press actually in the basement, and I had a friend who was a journeyman printer who taught me how to use it. And he was a motorcyclist. He loved vintage bikes. His name's Jim Gilman. He's still around. And he had an old BMW that he let me try. And I just became entranced with motorcycles. And he handed me a milk crate full of Classic Bike magazine. And at that point, Classic Bike was only about 4 years old. So the whole run would fit in a milk crate. And now it's been running for 40 years. So,
been around forever. And
I have every issue from number one. But that became a real education. I just poured over the whole run, and just my eyes were open, and I became fascinated, especially with cafe racer culture. The fashion, the motorcycles. I loved British bikes. I soon bought a Norton Atlas and bought a leather jacket and painted up the back, as I mentioned, and thus began my evolution. I started collecting motorcycles and repairing them, buying them, selling them, pursuing them as a not so much as a collector, but as an intrigued an investigator, let's say. If I was interested in a motorcycle because of what I'd read, I would find one and buy it. They were cheap in the 80s and even in the 90s, and would try them out. And if I really liked it, I kept it. If I didn't, I would sell it. And I ran through about a little over 200 motorcycles in
wow.
in a stretch of 20 odd years.
Oh my gosh.
And really got a sense of, every industry, American, British, German, Italian, Japanese, because I tried bikes from all of them and sort of really got a feel for the industry and started to collect. There was no internet then. So to learn about these bikes beyond magazines, I started to collect books and amassed thousands of titles on motorcycles to learn the history and the development and the culture behind. And that's really, at a certain point, people started to realize I kind of knew what I was talking about, and I got invited to be a judge at concours like the Legend of the Motorcycle concours in Half Moon Bay in 2006, 7, 8. And now I'm a judge at the Villa d'Este concours on Lake Como.
Wow.
And it's a bit of the backstory.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's fascinating. So I guess I could say you win in a ton %. So I think it's great. What's really fun about this book as I went through it, there's some marvelous photos. And when you talk about the culture of the cafe racer culture, is so much that. I mean, it was kind of Wild Boys, and it's kind of like the hot rod culture was here in the 40s and even 50s here in the United States, of these people that wanted to kind of customize stuff and go out there and be a little different and sometimes be a little bit of a rabble-rouser, I guess, is a little bit of a way to say it. So
there's a lot of history I found, actually. I mean, the book starts in 1896 with the invention of the pedal cycle. Pierre Michaud in France invented the pedal cycle, and Pierre Lallemant came to the U.S., who was one of his assistants, and also patented the pedal cycle here, which led to a lot of controversy. But I start with a quote from 1869 from one of the original pedal cyclists talking about the thrill of going 40 miles an hour downhill, which was something no one had ever done before. And I said, well, clearly this impulse is universal and old. That's kind of the thread that I follow from 1896. And I even talk about horse riding clubs in the Victorian era, where they would learn Cockney slang. And even though these guys were wealthy, some of them would even knock out a tooth or two to look more authentic.
Oh my gosh.
So the notion of fashion and ritual and, a kind of a club of people who like to go fast.
Yeah.
Is very, very old.
Yeah.
And that's really what the book is about. It's like I start with photographs from the early 1900s of people who were clearly, anyone today would identify as that's a cafe racer pose, crouched down on the bike, out cheating the wind. I've been collecting these photographs for decades. And so I have never before published pictures from the 1900s to the present, including my own journey helping to build a version of the Ace Cafe here in San Francisco in the mid 80s, while the Ace Cafe in London was still a tire shop.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Before it was revived. And my own sort of cafe racer experience, and my friends that I've made in the 2000s who were cafe racer enthusiasts at the same time in Britain and in France, who I didn't even know were doing exactly the same thing, buying old British bikes and kind of dressing as rockers around the world in the 1980s. This fascinating journey.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
Things that come up in culture and are repeated around the world without people knowing it.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. For you listeners out there, if you have any kind of fun with bikes or love bikes, this is a really cool book. And I think what's neat about it is going back to the history and understanding where all of this came from and the kind of people and the characters makes it really fun. So I'll make sure I put links on how you can get a copy of this book on Paul's show notes page here on Cars Yeah. We're going to take a short break, thank our sponsors, and we'll be right back. So hold on. My favorite collector car magazine is Keith Martin's Sports Car Market. I've been a subscriber for decades. Sports Car Market is the Wall Street Journal for the enthusiast and the collector. It's your monthly must-read whether you dream of owning a collector car, have 2 cars, or 200. Sports Car Market has been around for 31 years, and it's filled with valuable articles, intelligent write-ups, and the latest auction sales. Go to sportscarmarket.com and subscribe today. Plus, you'll get the exclusive SCM guide to restoration shops included for free. At checkout, use the code CARSYEAH and receive a 50% discount on your digital subscription. It's an exclusive offer from me here at Cars Yeah. I'm Mark Green, and I love Sports Car Market Magazine. Are you looking for a way to get your products or services into the ears of thousands of automotive enthusiasts around the globe? I can help. This is Mark Green here at Cars Yeah, and I'd be honored to be an influencer and ambassador for your brand in a unique and personal way. 5 days a week, thousands of subscribers and listeners enjoy the Cars Yeah podcast and website. Contact me today and I'll show you how at mark@carsyeah.com or connect with me through the Cars Yeah website at carsyeah.com. If you're listening to Cars Yeah, you've probably spent some time working on your favorite ride. But how confident are you working on your finances? You may be able to rebuild a fuel injection system, but can you decipher the details of a mutual fund? If you're like me, investments, insurance, annuities, budgeting, and other financial concepts may seem a bit daunting, but what if I told you there's a book that describes these subjects and more in an easy-to-read and a very humorous way? My friend Chris Kimball, CFP, a longtime sponsor and past guest here on Cars Yeah, has written that book, and it's titled The Saga of Ike and Penny, a couple's humorous journey through the confusing world of finance. It's a fun look at things you need to know, everything from investing to effective ways to get rid of credit card debt, and it's probably the only book on finance with a VMAX on the front cover and a classic Mini Cooper on the back. The book's available at Amazon for just $10, and this book will dramatically improve the direction of your financial future. I gave copies to each of my children. All securities are through Money Concepts Capital Corp. Christopher Kimball Financial Services is not affiliated with Money Concepts Capital Corp. Get your copy, The Saga of Ike and Penny, today. All right, we're back. We've just pulled up on our cafe racers. We're going to jump off here and continue with the talk. Paul, what I want to do now is take a look at some of the many roads you've been down and talk about a big challenge or a big failure. Could be from a business standpoint, could be from a life standpoint. Wherever you want to take us down this journey is up to you. But the question or the main point of this is more, what did it teach you so you can come out positively on the other end? So take us for a ride.
Oh, there have been many challenges along the way, I assure you. Probably the most significant came in 2009. I'd been doing my blog for about 3 years, and it was fairly popular, and I started to be invited to write for Cycle World and other magazines around the world, and it became apparent that there was potentially a new career here, which I'd never considered. In 2009, I had a fairly disastrous breakup. I got divorced, and it wasn't a happy situation. You know, sometimes you really find out what you're made of when you go through such a traumatic situation. And I chose to, it coincided with my daughter going off to college.
Well, not to mention 2009, we had a financial meltdown.
Oh, I had purchased a couple of houses that I was, renovating and flipping, and wasn't able to get construction loans. So I had to finance all that myself as my business dropped about 60%.
Sure.
And,
it all hit you at once.
It all hit at once. It was a great wave. And when I managed to clear my self out of that morass through the great help of my best friend, who's a genius realtor, his name's Bill Charman. He's also in my Ton Up book, as we've been cafe racer buddies for years. I moved to Paris for about a year and a half.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Another big change.
Yeah. Mostly because I needed to reinvent myself, and I needed to, even though my business was down, it was fairly easy for me to accept a phone call and say, yeah, I'll work on this. And I decided I really wanted to switch careers. And the only way I could do that 100% was to make it impossible to work in my own career, which meant leaving the country.
Yeah. Wow.
So
what a transition.
Yeah. And I didn't speak French. I still don't speak French well, but I had enough context there from doing international motorcycle shows and writing and things that I had some work there, mostly writing in English for French companies.
Well, and with the last name Delaurent, you could fit in somewhat, huh?
It opened some doors.
Yeah.
That's how I managed to turn a really tough situation that everybody was going through. I mean, I had my particular spin on it, but it was a tough ride if you had a business.
Well, And with all those personal issues combined on top of it, I mean, I can't imagine everything coming from all directions. But, I really commend you for what you did in this sense of, you know what, I'm going to go somewhere else and reinvent myself. That's my takeaway from that story that you just shared, is a decision to reinvent yourself and change. That's a brave, bold step, my friend. I mean, wow.
Yeah, there was no safety net.
No,
I don't have a trust fund.
No, most of us don't. No, we got to do it all on our own. I think it's fantastic. And, it's almost something that maybe everybody should try once in their life. And build yourself a runway, put a few coins away in the bank so that, but maybe try that, because you said at the beginning of our talk here, life is short and we got to make the best of the time that we have here. And as I've gotten older, you start to realize that, there's limited time, and start to see friends of mine pass away or acquaintances, and you go, wow, am I doing everything I want? Nobody wants to end up in that last breath of bed going, when I wish I would have. So let me ask you this, from all of that turmoil, you made this bold step and change. If you could narrow down all of that to one great result, what would it be? What was the big result of learning lesson from taking such massive steps?
Forcing myself to concentrate on writing, especially, is what opened the most doors. It did become a new career, because as I became a better writer, I was invited to write books. That's sort of become my, that gained a lot of respectability, let's say. People, as much as everybody looks at the internet, people still give a lot more weight to books. And if a publisher has enough faith in your credibility to spend tens of thousands of dollars publishing a book with your name on it, that means something to people. So it took a few years. I didn't write my first book until 2013, which was also with motor books. And it was also about cafe racers. And it was called Cafe Racers. And it was based on an exhibition I did with the photographer Michael Lichter and Sturgis. So yeah, the net result of all that process was it worked in terms of making me a good enough writer that people wanted to pay me for my skills.
There you go. Well, I'll remind our listeners again, A Century of Cafe Racer Speed and Style, Ton Up, Ton, Ton Up. And it's, of course, by Paul here, d'Orleans. And the foreword is by Chris Hunter, which is the founder of Bike EXIF. Did I say that right? Is it EXIF or EXIF?
I say, it's just one of those weird acronyms, like, is it GIF or GIF? I call it Bike EXIF, and most people do.
Yeah.
EXIF is the data file on every photograph, actually.
Oh, okay. There's where that's from.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a photography term. And it's funny, Chris, Bike EXIF has become, I think, probably the number one motorcycle website in the world. And he started it in 2007. He's Australian. He used to have a blog about bicycle fixies. And he contacted me in about 2007 and says, hey, I'm thinking about switching to kind of a new custom motorcycle scene that was growing, like a completely different non-Harley Davidson based custom motorcycle scene that was much less sort of Baroque and not chopper, and much more cafe racer and scrambler and fun and young and not traditional. And I just thought that was fantastic. And I said, a daily blog is a double-edged sword. You'll get a lot of eyeballs, but it's a ball and chain for daily content that's not always going to be spectacular. But he kept at it, and now it's just phenomenal. So it's great that he was returned the favor and wrote the introduction to Ton Up.
Very nice. Nice. Well, share with us a story that instigated this passion you have for motorcycles. You talked about starting to ride back when you're in high school, I believe you said, so you could go to night school, so you could get out of high school quicker and get on with your life. Is there a pivotal moment in your life when you knew that you were going to be a bike guy, a cafe racer?
Yeah, I think it would be when my friend Jim, who was the printer, he let me ride his 1960 BMW, a 500cc flat twin, and I took it out. I was in the Sunset District in San Francisco, and I took it out to the beach and rode it up around the Great Highway. And there was just something really lovely about this old motorcycle. It was had a great feel. It had You could have a visceral relationship with it that was very pleasurable. It was comfortable to ride. It had a great sound. It was smooth. I liked the aesthetics, sort of the austere aesthetics of the BMW. And it just set something off in me. I joke that, it infected me with the virus, and anybody who's a motorcycle fanatic knows exactly what I mean. Something triggers you, and it's something it's hard to shake.
Yeah, no, I understand 100%. And when I got back into riding, my bike I bought was a Ducati Monster. And fabulous. I just loved it. Had a bit of a cafe racer essence to it, I think. I didn't want a Harley. I wanted something a little more sporty. I liked the idea of Italian. And then I got really nuts and bought an MV Agusta F4, wow. Which every time I got off of, I went, what am I doing? I've got kids to raise. This is crazy. I think that bike revved to like 14,000 RPM or higher. It was just nuts. But
it's a gorgeous design, too.
Oh,
I credit you for good taste. I'm friends with Miguel Galuzzi, who designed the Monster.
Oh, my gosh. Okay. Yeah.
And actually did a profile of him for Cycle World, I think it was 2 years ago, on the 25th anniversary of the Monster. Fantastic design.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah.
Pierre Terblanche designed the MV F4, and
that
fabulous
work of art.
Iconic design.
Yeah, that bike ended up going. A friend of mine's wife bought it for him. He collects Italian bikes. He doesn't ride bikes. He just collects them, mostly old cafe racers and vintage bikes. But she loved that, and she knew he loved it. So ever since I let go of it, it's been a piece of art in the entry of their very modern home. Kind of hangs on a wall there. So kind of sad it's not on the road, but it's a work of art. So
it's a work of art.
Yeah, everything about it. Even you take the fairings off, everything inside of it was a work of art. I mean, they didn't stop on the outside. It just got deeper and deeper.
I misspoke earlier. It was Massimo Tamburini.
Oh, Tamburini.
Who designed. Yeah, not Pierre Terblanche. Yeah. And Tamburini, of course, was. I include a lot of Bimotas in my in ton-up book. The book spans to the present. It ends with electric cafe racers that were built just last year. I think Bimota is almost an underrated company. I think what they did as a tiny little bespoke Italian firm was just phenomenal. I mean, the level of craftsmanship they put into their motorcycles was fabulous. And Tamburini, of course, was their principal designer. I have an exhibition up right now, actually, at the Peterson Museum in L.A.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, it's called Silver Shotgun, and it's about Italian motorcycle design of the 70s. I've actually I have a nonprofit called the Motorcycle Arts Foundation, and we've contracted for the next 5 years to do all the motorcycle content at the Peterson. I have the iconic machine in the exhibit is a 1978 Bimota SB2, which was their first street legal motorcycle. And it's just wild.
No kidding.
It's sideburns and flares, and bell bottoms. It's so 1970s extravagance. Anyway, that to me was the iconic design. So it's great that you had an F4 designed by the same fellow.
Yeah, fabulous. Well, let's talk about your first really special motorcycle. That first bike you got that you went, man, I've always wanted one of these. This is cool. What was it?
I don't think people really talk about. They talk about objects, but they rarely talk about motivations and the changes that acquiring something that you've wanted or is special can have on your psyche. So I've been through a series of bikes that I didn't think I could own or afford, or I maybe didn't deserve. I don't know. Well, I think maybe we all think that, like, wow, do I deserve a Bugatti Atlantic or even a Type 35? Am I the right caretaker for this machine? The first one I'd say was a 1966 Velocette Thruxton, which is Velocette was a tiny little family company in England. They handmade their motorcycles, and about 1,000 of these Thruxton models, which are kind of a quintessential cafe racer. It was built as a production racer, actually, from 65 to 71. I had always wanted one. There was a British Racing green example at a collection in Oakland, which is its own story. The fellow who owned this collection of 300 bikes, it turned out he was the largest manufacturer of amphetamines. Privateer manufacturer, I should say.
I was going to say,
drug companies make amphetamines and call it Ritalin and Adderall, but he was a privateer.
I see.
got caught and sold the collection, and that's how I was able to buy my Thruxton in 1989, and I still have it. And
you still have it? Wow.
It's a keeper.
Yeah.
A cold dead hands motorcycle.
Yeah, beautiful bike. You think about those bikes, kind of big bulbous tank. Interesting seat pad, if I recall, on the back, the way it kind of drooped down with your legs and stuff.
A racing saddle that kept you from sliding off the back of the seat, when you were crouched down.
Sure. Yeah. A lot of those had that kind of bump in the back too, which was kind of a standard in that style. But I think it's cool that you still have that bike because so many people let those first ones go. I hear that from people all the time here. Well, let me get into your head a little bit here, Paul. If you woke up tomorrow and you were a motorcycle, not what you want to be, but how you perceive yourself as a cafe racer, what would you be and why?
Well, I just said it.
That was it, huh? Yeah.
I think the reason we keep certain things or they become really ingrained in our soul or our, how we experience the world is some kind of relationship. It's not this thing because I've had it for so long and I put so many tens of thousands of miles on it. It was my sole transportation at a certain stretch.
Wow.
in let's say around 1990, 91. I didn't have a car or anything. And,
part of you. It's part of you at this point.
It became part of me. Yeah. And I would say I identify with it because it's quirky. Velosets have very curious, but very effective systems. Like their clutch is super narrow and inboard of the final drive sprocket, which is unique. Mm-hmm. People pull their hair out over it if they don't understand it, but it works incredibly well. And they have a beautiful, their timing, the gears in the timing chest are all helically cut and a very fine pitch, and it looks like a watch inside. And so there's a lot of intelligence that went into the design, but it's also graceful and dynamic, and the performance is amazing. Veloset was the first motorcycle ever to do 100 miles an hour for 24 hours at the Montlhéry Speed Bowl in 1961. And I joke that, I was in my 20s, I was attempting to match that record piecemeal on the streets.
Yeah. Be careful these days.
Many hours at 100 miles an hour as I could. Nowadays, I don't.
No. It's hard. That's the challenge these days with riding. Is a lot of inattentive drivers out there. You got to be so careful. But wow, nice bike. That's very cool. Well, we're entering what I call the last lap. I'm going to fire off a series of questions and ask you to give our listeners some quick blips of that Thruxton throttle. Say that 10 times fast. So here we go. Would you share one of your personal habits you believe has contributed to your many successes over the years?
Just consistency. Just keep doing it.
Persistence.
A lot of people have asked me about how do I do this? How do I get into it? And I said, well, if you're asking me, you're not already doing it.
Yeah,
so
you just got to stick with it. It's how you do 1,500 podcast interviews over 5 years.
Exactly.
You just keep doing it, even as crazy as it sounds. How about if I could arrange for you to sit down and have a drink or a meal with anyone in the motorcycle industry, living or deceased? Who would it be?
I have actually thought about that. Of course, many people that I'd love to pick their brains. George Brough, who made Brough Superior motorcycles. Although I reckon I wouldn't get a straight answer out of any question I asked him because he was such a storyteller.
Yeah.
I think talking with Soichiro Honda would be fascinating.
Oh yeah.
What a brilliant man. Probably as a generic, I would say designers. I'm fascinated with designers and how they think.
Yeah.
And how they manage to make something successful, because that's so difficult today. I'm watching the electric motorcycle industry struggle with a completely new design paradigm. And so talking with people about how do you make a design that appeals to millions would be really interesting to me.
Yeah, fascinating. How about the best motorcycle advice you've ever received?
Ride within your limits.
Yes. Yeah, be careful out there. And I was talking the other day with a guy who was giving me a ride, a Lyft driver. We're talking about motorcycles. And he said, I don't ride enough to feel competent. And I'm really worried about that. I said, yeah, you should, because if you only get on your bike, a couple times a year, it's like jumping in a race car only a few times a year. Not a good idea You need to have seat time.
Another great quote is motorcycling is a perishable skill.
Oh,
you have to keep up your skills.
Yeah, perish. There's an operative word there. Yeah, that's a scary one. How about a great resource out there for people that are into motorcycles? Is there one you can throw at us?
The web is an incredible resource, and you can get a lot of information out there. But really, I think mentorship is another thing. I think you really have to find someone who you relate to, who can guide you. Let's say if you're talking about collecting or even just writing, having someone you can talk to who can pass down advice like motorcycling is a perishable skill and ride within your limits and wear your gear. We need each other to hand down what we've learned.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'll remind our listeners another great resource I would recommend, thevintage.com. Of course, got to plug ourselves here a little bit, Paul. And let me spell that for you because it's unique. The VINTAGENT, thevintage.com. If you love bikes, that is a place to go. Of course, Paul's blog, a wonderful thing to subscribe to. Now, obviously, when I ask my guests this next question about a book they would recommend, I'm going to recommend Hunt Up by my good guest friend here, Paul. Is there another book, though, you might suggest people get their hands on that you've enjoyed reading?
Yeah, I can recommend Melissa Pearson's book. It's called The Perfect Vehicle, and it's a series of essays and meditations on why motorcycles, basically. Melissa's terrific. I helped found a motorcycle film festival in New York a few years ago, back in 2012, and she was a guest judge, and got to know her through that, and she's great. And actually, we're thinking about rebooting the film festival. My Motorcycle Arts Foundation is thinking about reviving it at the Peterson Museum. So
that'd be a perfect place for it.
Yeah. In partnership with the museum would be great.
Absolutely.
And actually, speaking of the Vintage, we host a new film every week, whether it's a short or a feature or something. We're dedicated to promoting motorcycle related film on the website, and we've had everything from 2-minute shorts to Easy Rider or other films like that. So
awesome. Well, I'll make sure I put links to all these great resources on Paul's show notes page on the Cars Yeah website. Just go to carsyeah.com, type in Paul D'Orleans. That's spelled a little D, apostrophe big O, RLEANS. And that page will pop right up with all these great links. And again, I remind you to go to thevintage.com and subscribe there. Get his blog. You will enjoy it, I promise. Even if you're not a big bike person, you're going to find something fascinating there, I promise you. All right, we're up to the checkered flag here, and this last question can be a bit of a doozy, to use a car phrase. I'm going to buy you a very cool collector, not a car today, a motorcycle. Something very cool, fun to park in your garage. I want you to ride it and enjoy it, though, so no garage queens here. You can't sell it to buy a bunch of other toys with, and if it was the only one really cool collector bike you could have, what would it be?
That's a great question. I've been lucky enough to own most of the bikes that I would consider sort of dream bikes or top 10 bikes.
Yeah.
So I've ridden most of them, and one of those bikes was a 1925 Brev Superior SS100. I actually rode one across the country on the Cannonball 2 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. At the end of that ride, I realized, no, this is not
not the one.
Not that bike. I would probably say actually a Vincent Black Lightning. I've actually got one in my garage right now. It's not mine. I'm going to make a film with it. But talk about a storied motorcycle.
What year was that?
1950.
50. Okay.
Richard Thompson actually did a beautiful song called 1952 Vincent Black Lightning. You can find it on YouTube. His version or many others. It's really terrific. So I'm working with a filmmaker to make a short film about this bike, but I've ridden one up the Grossglockner Pass in Austria.
Oh my gosh.
The hill climb there, and what a fabulous, compelling and historic machine. It ticked all the boxes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Marginal road legality, but
yeah. Wow. Well, nice choice. Very, very special bike. I'm going to do a little more history research on that. Google it, if they say, and look into that a little more. What are the best ways people can follow along with you? I know I've mentioned your website, Are there other ways that people can follow you out there?
Sure. I have a pretty big Facebook page, also just called The Vintagent, 2 words. My Instagram handle is The Vintagent, 1 word. I don't really do Twitter, but I think if you follow those social media, you can find pretty much what I'm up to or what my team is up to. I have other people that contribute to those with film and with stories. And I just wanted to say that we really focus on culture and people, and we're not a technical site per se. We don't focus on, oh, here's the latest model, or it's more about stories. And that's what I find rich in the world of motorcycling is stories about people, what they did, what they're interested in. And I often say that motorcycles are the MacGuffin for the Vintagent. They're the object that is the nominal subject, but really the subject is people and stories. Yeah. So I think anyone can relate to the content there.
Absolutely. That's what I've discovered after 1,500 shows now here on Cars Yeah. It really is the people. It's the machinery, the cars, the bikes that bring us all together and form wonderful relationships. So, Paul, thanks for being so generous today with your time, your expertise, and for taking me on a great bike ride. I can feel the wind in I won't say my hair, I've got none left, but in my face, the bugs in my teeth. Let's put it that way. This has been great. Now remind our listeners again, get your hands on this book. I'll put links to it. Hunt Up by Paul D'Erlans. It's a wonderful book. Paul, until you and I talk again, I'll see you out there on the road.
Great chatting.
You too. Hey, Cars Yeah listeners, this is Mark Green. If you love the Cars Yeah podcast, I have something new for you. I've teamed up with Keith Martin, a collector car market expert and the editor of Sports Car Market magazine, to create the Buy, Sell, Hold podcast. Buy, Sell, Hold is the essence of collecting. Together, we take you on an educational ride into the collector car market, talking with industry experts, helping you navigate your collector car journey so you know when to buy, sell, hold. We talk with seasoned experts who buy, sell, and hold investment vehicles, and they'll share their insider secrets on how they make their buying decisions when it comes to making these important investments. You'll find the Buy, Sell, Hold podcast on the Cars Yeah website, on the Sports Car Market website, and if you're a podcast app subscriber to Cars Yeah, Buy, Sell, Hold will come right to your mobile device, just like the Cars Yeah podcast. Automatically. Join Keith Martin and me on a great new venture on the Buy, Sell, Hold podcast today.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.